guys, it's Rose. Welcome back to Journals in Time, and welcome if you are new. So happy to have you here. So today we are making specimen sliders, and these things, I am just so chuffed with these. Look at that. Isn't it so fun? Okay, so that is one type. I have made several, as you can see. This was the initial concept that I came up with, and it's a lot simpler than the other one. Now I could convert this, but I'm not going to. I quite like these as well, just as a simple, fun, interactive piece in a journal. Now these can be used as belly bands or just as decor pieces. I would probably tend to use them just as decor pieces because of the moving parts. But once I get into a journal, it might prove sturdier than I am thinking at the moment. But anyway, so on these ones I have just put down 3 little images, and you slide your slider up and down to fit over the image. So that is really cute. On these ones, as you can see, I have obscured the images a little, and as you move up and down, it obscures the one that you were on, brings up a new one, and same again when you bring it down to the bottom one. And I think these are just so much fun. Okay, so much fun. Alright, so as you can see, I have several here. Here's one with a little fox, and we have a hedgehog up here, and if I bring it down, we have a badger at the bottom. Aren't they so cute? Here's a bee one. 3 different kinds of bees. We have the worker bees, we have the queen bee, and a drone, I think. So that's that one. And then I have one with a larger slider piece, and we have 3 different flower images behind here. Okay, and then we have this one. Now this is a little bit of a fail, but I'm still going to use it. I still like it. So we have shells behind here, but if you can see, the images and the window were so long this way that they didn't fit nicely to have the spacing in between them. But like I said, I am still going to use it. It's just not ideal. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, so how do we make these? Well, I'm going to show you 2 different ways today. One, I'm using some little useful tools. Well, one useful tool really, but 2 useful tools. But I'm also going to show you how to make them without the tools, just in case there are any of those things that you don't have or you just don't want to use. So I have some pieces ready here. So this, these are just backing papers from my digital kits. This one is from the Echoes of Ireland. This one is from the Spring Fresh. And I just backed them onto some book page. I wanted them to be not too heavy and not too thick for the slider part to go up and down. If it's too thick, that would possibly have trouble going up and down. So I wanted to keep them relatively thin, but sturdy enough as well at the same time. So I found that this just worked nicely. It's just a children's book page and regular copy paper. And for our slider pieces, I'm using some more cereal box. I love this colour for those frames for specimen cards. This is absolutely gorgeous card to use, but I'm also using a more decorative one as well, just so that we can see the different effects that we can get with it. Okay, so the first thing we need to look at, obviously I have my pieces cut down, so you would need to figure out how wide you want it and how tall you want it. Now these are shorter than the other ones that I have made. These were just happen to be pieces that I have. So I'm using scraps here again today. Great scrap buster again. So yeah, these are slightly shorter than the other ones, but you need to decide how tall you want it. Do you want it to go top to bottom on your page? You could have it going across as well. That by all means you could do that. Do you want this to sit in kind of the middle of your page and have a space top and bottom? You need to decide that yourself. And obviously you can choose your own width as well, how wide you want them or how narrow you want them. So like I said, these are just 2 scrap pieces that I had left over, and that is how the height and width was decided for me. But on the other ones I did cut them particularly to the height. The width might have been just kind of arbitrary depending on what scraps I had. So that's the first consideration. The next thing we need to look at is our slider pieces. Now, as you can see, I already have a window cut in here, and I don't have my window cut in this one. Okay, so because I already have my window cut here, and I cut these before I chose my images. You could do it the other way around, and I'll show you that with this in a moment. I had to look for images that would fit, sorry, in here, and I'm just trying to think, am I doing this the wrong way around? I'm not. These go with this. I'm getting myself confused here now. Okay, so I had to look for images that would fit in here, and what I am actually going to do, I'm going to use stamps on this one. In all the rest of them I used images, fussy cut images and things like that. This one I'm going to use stamps. You can use anything as your images. It could be just an interesting page that you move the slider up and down and stop to focus on one part. You don't have to put down images. It's entirely up to yourself. Have fun with that part. There are so many ideas blowing up in my head with this thing that I need to step away from it after this video. I need to step away from it, let it all settle down, and then come back to it, because it just fired my imagination so much. It got a little overwhelming, I have to say. So that is what we're doing with this one. So I made sure that my stamped images will fit nicely inside this window when they're down. With this one, I have these images ready to go. They sit nicely on the actual width and the height of my piece. So I'm going to make my window to fit these. Okay, so as to the size of this, the window that you cut in it needs to not come over the edges of this width. Okay, as you can see here, I just have a little bit of room on either side. The height of it, sorry, no, let's go back here. So we have our window to the right width. The width of this piece, this slider piece, it needs to be at least 1/4 of an inch wider, 1/4 of an inch each side wider than your back piece, your base piece. Okay, and for the height, it does not need to be this long. I'm going to be cutting this down, and we are going to have a look right now at how tall I'm going to cut it. So if you will look on these ones, you'll see that I have 2 slots cut top and bottom over the window and under the window. Just get this situated back in here, or it'll just get lost. So I need to leave enough room for that to happen. So I want my slots to come to around here. Okay, or at least not below there. I need to leave enough room that it's not going to break and it's not going to get structurally damaged when I put in those slots, because those slots are quite large and we'll have little pieces left kind of either side of it. So we need to make sure it's stable enough. So if I want my slot to be here, I need at least, and I'm taking a piece out, so let's say I'm leaving a piece of 1/8 of an inch for my slot, 1/8 of an inch wide, and I need a piece that's at least 1/4 of an inch above again. Okay, now I'm marking this because I'm just trying to show you guys. So here is where my slot is going to go, and here is the height I needed to be behind our base piece. Okay, so I'm going to cut it at here, and I'm going to do the other one similar, if not the very same. Okay, okay, so that's going to be the size of our piece, and the next thing we need to do is to cut our slot. Now on this one I am going to use a little tool that I have. On the other one I'm going to do it all by hand. I'm not going to use the tools, okay? But because I've already used a die here, I've used a die to cut my window, and I'm going to use this tool to cut my slot. This is a little punch that the fabulous Linda McCarthy sent to me in some Happy Mail a couple of months ago, and I love this thing. So thank you so much, Linda. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to get it situated and punch across. Now with this, I know that if I just put the edge of my paper to the edge, right to this edge, it'll cut it just where I need it to be. Okay, so as you can see, I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch. This is slightly less, but leave about 1/4 of an inch for yourselves. And I actually forgot to do one very important step there, and I'm going to do it now before I go any further. I am reinforcing the back of this piece with some packing tape, and the reason I'm doing that is because it will help protect against tearing on that little tiny piece that we have left there. So I should have done this before I started punching, but you know, when you're on camera you tend to forget things like this. So I'm going to bring it as close to the window as I can without coming down over the lip of the window, and I'm going to make sure that it goes right to the very, very edge. We really need it to come to that very edge, okay? So get that situated there. I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to put a layer down here as well. Okay, so as I was putting the tape on the back of this, I had some tape left over, so I reinforced the back of this one as well, because this will also have a slot. Actually, this one may not, but generally speaking, I would be putting a slot in this. I'll talk more about that in a second. So let's continue with our slot here. Now I'm going to have to go back and take out that tape, and that's no big deal here. So ideally I would have had that tape in place before I punched at all, but it's fixable. It's always fixable. Okay, just getting that tape out of there. Okay, so I'm going to take my slot all the way across to the other side, keeping that flush here so that I don't go too far, and we have our slot. Now I do have an extra bit of tape there. I'll sort that out in a second. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the very same on the other side. And that's what we have. Sorry about the clatter. I forget when I'm filming that I can't just drop things because it sounds really, really loud on the camera. So I'm sorry. It's just that's how I normally work. Okay, so this is what we have at the moment. We have our slider piece already. Just like that. Now, I mean, you could just leave it at this, and that would be really, really cool, but we're going to go further. Of course, we're going to go further because we always go further. That would make just a really cool piece in and of itself. Now, I am going to round my corners here, and I'm going to use a small round on these. Okay. Et voila. Now this is the time to ink, and I'm going to head off and do that, and I'll be right back to you guys. Okay, so at this point you can decide whether you want to just leave it like this, or whether you want to put the slider paper, you know, the paper that obscures the other picture. You have your choice at this point. I was going to make it just as a slider one again, just to show you guys. But I think you get the idea, and I can go ahead and make my cover piece. Okay. I'm going to do my images before I do that. So I need to put my slots in here because we're going to be threading this paper through here. We need slots in this piece as well. So I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to take this, and I am going to line it up flush to the edge so it doesn't go too far, and make a slot top and bottom. Now, as you can see as well, the slot is staying about, again, about 1/4 of an inch away from the top, and that is about, it's about right. We need to glue this piece to the page to put it into place, so you need to have enough that will hold it into place. So about 1/4 of an inch again is about right. Just going to give those a quick ink. I'm sorry about this. Take me 2 seconds. Don't be giving out. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is to get our images sorted. And I'm going to thread this on here to do that. I'm actually going to first mark my center point. And then I'm going to thread this down here. Ooh. And I have that right at the center point there. Now when you're doing this, you need to kind of try to centralize. See where it has movement over and back? You need to try and kind of centralize that before you place your images, so that you know where to place your images, because it just looks better when it's centralized like that, and we're going to try and keep it central like that when we put on our cover paper. Okay, so let's take our first image, and in the center I am putting a sentiment on this one. I'm putting "Be Free." And that is going to be lovely. And I am going to emboss this with gold heat embossing, because I can't stay away from the gold. If you know me at all, you know I love gold. So let's get this done. And I'm going to do this one at a time, just because of the slider part. I don't want to be kind of knocking things around. The powder and things will get knocked around. I'm just going to straighten this up again. Here we go. And ooh, get that in there. Now, hopefully that will work. So I'll go off. Okay, so we have our "Be Free" situated. Now, when we're looking at situating the other two images, we have to take a couple of things into consideration, particularly with these ones, also with the simpler ones. So if you'll see on these ones, where I'm going to glue them to the page. So top, we'll say if I use 1/4 inch here to put glue, this piece will only be able to move to that part, to where I've glued it, to the line of my glue. So I need to make sure that any image that I put on here for the window doesn't go above here. Not the 1/4 inch. We have to line the top of this piece up with that 1/4 inch glue line, and then judge where the window lands here. Okay, so we need to adjust our images accordingly, and I have left them down a tiny bit, so we don't even have to go all the way to the very top with this one. And there's plenty of room in that one. And with these ones, it's a similar thing. So when we're sliding, that will only, this piece will only come to the top of, or to the bottom part of this slot here. It won't go any further because of the paper. Okay, so then we need to judge where our image is lying in relation to that. So when I'm making it, I know that if I move my slider piece and line the very top of this piece up with the bottom part of that slot, then that is where my image, it can't go any higher than this. Same on the bottom, I bring it down and I line the bottom edge of my slider piece with the top edge of my slot, and my image can't go any lower than this. Okay, so that's how we figure out where our images need to be. So let's get that lined up and get our next image on the stamp block. So our next image, I'm going to do this bird now. Yeah, that way. So I want that. Do I want the bird or the butterfly first? Let's do the bird first. Now, this image isn't going to show completely through my window, so I need to mark somehow exactly where my window is falling so that I can position my stamp. Not so bad when you're using a printed image. You can kind of glue down the middle of it and then move this piece out of the way and glue the rest of it. But with a stamped image, it's not quite that easy. So I'm just going to mark top, bottom and sides, just very lightly. So lightly, in fact, that I might not even be able to see that myself. And I'm going to get this stamped in and heat embossed. And then I'm going to do the same with the bottom. I'm going to line up my slider piece and get my stamped image in there. Okay, so I actually messed up one of my images here when I finished embossing it. I forgot to let it cool and I swiped down and the whole thing smeared just on the butterfly down here. It's a little bit off, but it's okay. I'm going to continue and use it anyway. Now I just need to leave this cool down for a small bit. I'm just going to double check my placement here. Yeah, I mean that's as good as it's going to get, really. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, so our next port of call, and I need to take this little piece of tape off. If you remember at the beginning I said I had a tiny piece of tape here that needed to come off, and there we go. So our next thing to do is our paper strip. Now I found that copy paper just didn't work properly for me. It just didn't run as smoothly as I liked. So I started using this. It's kind of like tracing paper. It's not actually tracing paper, it's baking paper I think, but tracing paper would do a very similar job as well. So kind of a lighter paper I would say, but at the same time try out what you have. Some of the lighter scrapbooking papers and things like that might work really well, so try what you have. But I'm just using this at the moment, and I'm using it plain at the moment, but there's nothing to say that you couldn't decorate this whole sheet and cut pieces from it for the sliders. All the rest of that, I'm leaving them plain right now, and these things can actually be changed out afterwards. I mean, we're going to be attaching this, and you could come back later on and just rip it off and detach it and put on a new one. So for now I'm happy to go with just the plain ones. So to get the size of this, we need to get the right width. Okay, and we definitely need it to be at least twice as long as our page, I would say. We'll check that in a moment. So when I am measuring the width of this, I am putting the slider piece down and I'm taking that slot just over the edge. Can you see that? Just over the edge there. And when I mark this side, I'm going to bring it slightly in from the edge again. So I'm going to bring it in about that much here. So because this one is curved, I need to kind of keep an eye on the curvature so that the paper doesn't get caught. Okay, so we have the width for our paper. I'm just going to trim that to size, and I'm actually going to ink this as well just to give it a little bit of colour. I don't like the starkness of the colour of it, so I will speed up the camera for that bit and I will get back to you guys. Oh my god, I did that completely wrong, guys. We need to measure it to this slot, not the one on the slider. Oh my lord, I'm so sorry. So I'm just going to remeasure that and recut it, and I'll be right back. Again, I am taking the slot on the top, I'm leaving it slightly off at one side, and I'm marking it slightly inside that slot. Okay, it's the same thing, I'm just using this piece instead of the slider piece. That was so silly of me. Okay, so we have a strip that will fit through our slots here on this piece. Okay, and I'm just going to run it all the way through just to make sure it doesn't get caught anywhere, and it's all good. Now, we need to get our acetate in here. You do not have to put acetate in here. I am, simply because I can. And I have some pieces here. It's funny, you go looking for acetate and you can't see it. It's It's very hard to find a lost piece of acetate. Okay, so I'm just going to measure so that this sits inside each of the slots and the sides of my thing, and I'm going to tape it down with double-sided tape. Okay, so I have that stuck down, and as you may have seen, I used my embossing pouch with the powder in. It just dabbed over the edge just in case there were any little stickies that we don't want to be sticky, and there is over this side, so it was just as well I did that. So we don't want anything sticking or catching here, so make sure that your acetate is stuck right to the very edge, as in there are no edges lifting on it. And make sure that any kind of, if you do use double-sided tape, that if there's any peeking out under the acetate, that you de-stick it with something like that. It doesn't have to be an embossing pouch. You can use like talcum powder or corn flour from the kitchen. Anything with a fine powder like that, that will stick to that stick and make it not sticky anymore. Like so. Okay, so we have our acetate in place. We need to get this in place. Now, the one end of this is going to be, and I know this is too long right now, okay, and just out of curiosity, this piece is about twice the length of a signature. A signature in a journal that I would typically, the size that I would typically make, okay? Now, that would be necessary for those long ones. We'd need it to be fairly long. These ones are going to be shorter, and you know, just get your piece that you think will wrap around it. It needs to wrap around it. And, you know, we'll have a little bit of leeway for this as well, so it doesn't need to be even that size. And we can decide, or we can figure out what size it needs to be. Just make it a little bit longer than you think it's going to need. Okay, so the first part of this is going to get stuck here. Now, I started out actually sticking this piece just like this and going from there. But I have found that this leaves some room for error that I didn't like. For this one, yeah, I'm going to do it the other way. It's a little bit more difficult, but for me it was worth it, okay? So we're going to thread this on. Doesn't matter where it's sitting as long as it is nicely situated along these slots. Then I am going to get this into place. Now I'm just sliding it in. I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer with this one. I should have probably brought you in closer earlier on as well, but there we go. So you can see that this is slipping inside the acetate piece there, okay? So I'm just going to situate that so that it is just inside that lip of the acetate, because we need to have enough room to actually glue it. Okay, I'm going to make sure it's as central as I can. Now I can see that this is going off at an angle, it's not straight. So I'm going to straighten that, or at least try. Okay, now I'm going to paper clip that into place. This is the only really tricky part about this, guys, getting this paper into place. And I'm being fairly pedantic about it. You don't have to be this precise and what have you. I just like them to work smoothly, as I'm sure you will as well. So that is why I'm doing it this way. I'm going to thread it through. I'm going to bring it around and make sure you thread it back into this bottom piece as well. Don't just go up around the bottom. That will give you incorrect measurements and things, and it just won't work. Now, we have that in place. I'm going to put another paper clip just to make sure that that doesn't shift anywhere. So I'm clipping it so that I'm holding it front and back. And on this side I can then figure out where I need my paper cut. So I'm just going to mark it there with my nail. You could mark it with a pencil or a pen if you want to. And I'm going to cut just very slightly shy of that. and slot it under and check. Yes, so that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to leave those two paper clipped like so, and I'm going to do this one. Now, I have found that using double-sided tape works really well for this, but I do put some wet glue on as well to give myself some wiggle room, so it can kind of get a little bit awkward and a little bit messy, okay, but just bear with. So I'm going to take some double-sided tape, which I don't have much left, but I should have enough for here. Now I have a narrow, very narrow piece here, so I'm going to cut this in half. Now I'm going to put this on to the very end of my paper here. And I'm going to trim it. Again, you want to make sure that there's no sticky peeping out over the top of this, because it will stick to your acetate and things, and or your back piece, and you won't be able to move. Okay? So tidy, tidy, tidy on all the glues and tapes in this one. Okay, so I'm going to get my tape off of here, and that needs another little bit of trimming just there. And I am going to get a little bit of wet glue on there as well, just to give myself enough wiggle room to get this into place. I found that if I just used the wet glue on it, it was very hard to slide it in under because the paper was getting wet, but because I'm putting this wet glue on top of the tape, it's not soaking through the paper and it's not affecting it at all. So we get the best of both worlds this way. So all I'm going to do is try and lift my edge here and slide that under, and I will keep it taut down here so that I know that it's going into the right position. Now I pulled that back a tiny bit because I could see the edge of the paper there, and that's okay. We can adjust on the other side for that. So that is side one done. That went very, very well. Let's get this in here, and I'm just clipping this into place so that it's not moving when I'm doing the other side. And I'm going to get this clipped down here as well. Voila. And now let's do the other side. Very same thing. Just going to get our tape on, get some glue on, and get it slotted under. And there we have it. Now obviously the glue isn't dry yet, so I'm not going to be moving it too much, but yeah, of course I had to move it at least a little bit because that's just me. My lord, what am I like? I'm like a child. I just can't leave things be. Okay, that glue needs to set up before we can check it if it works, but it's gonna work. I mean, it's made the same way as the rest of them. Okay, so that is that one, and isn't that just awesomely fun? Now these may seem complicated. Again, it's one of those things where there's a lot of explanation, but they're not very complicated at all. I mean, there are three pieces. There's the base piece, the slider piece, and the paper. And that's it. You know, it's just how to put them together is the thing. So, yeah. Okay, stop it. Put it away, Rose. I'm like a child when it comes to these things. I can't just leave them alone. Okay, let's get to the other one, and that will take my mind off of that one. Here we have all of the other ones that we have made, and I think these guys are awesome. And don't forget, you can keep it simple with just the slider piece and some little images, and that is really awesome too. These are going into my spring journals that I am still working on, and they're going to look awesome just on the page as little decor pieces, and I think they are fabulous. Okay, so that is it for me for today, guys. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment on the video if you want to be in with a chance to win our Taurus journal for the month of May. It's been great chatting to you guys today, and I will talk to you all very, very soon.